Hi, so I'm Tina from CCF. I'm a host on CCF, and I'm here with Dawn and Myrna and Merlin and Georgina. And we're just going to talk a little bit about the Alberta excommunication crisis that happened in the late 90s. Um, just to give an overview, Dawn and Myrna were excommunicated at that point, and Merlin and Georgina decided to give up their meetings so that they wouldn't be excommunicated. And I'm just gonna let these four wonderful people tell their story. So, Dawn and Myrna, would you like to share some of your personal experience at that time and how it's evolved over the years? And
Okay. Well, I was raised in a divided home. So my dad didn't go to meetings. Mom did. She was very devout about following things. After a while, for the first few years that they were married, she kind of let it slide. But then, about 10 years in, she decided that us kids needed to get a little exposure. So we started getting. She would have her own little Sunday morning meetings with us, and she kind of emphasized all the points about how this truth was the only right way, and so on. And it kind of bothered me a little bit right from the beginning, but she was able to provide all these proof texts that seemed to show that, yeah, it sounds correct. But anyway, it didn't stand really good with me. Anyway, as time went on, I didn't profess until I was actually I started university. I guess I was 18 or 19. And so I was in it then from that point on. But I guess the thing that kept me still wondering about how this could be the only right way was because I had so much respect for my dad that he was just total integrity as far as I was concerned. And my mother felt the same way about him, that she totally respected and honored him, and just was so concerned that he was going to go to a lost eternity, and which I had trouble understanding. So anyway, as time went on, well, a few years later, Myrna and I got married. And a few years later, we got a Wednesday night meeting in our home. And then a few years later, we got a Sunday morning meeting. And a few years later, we got kind of into a little trouble in contention with the workers and asking too many questions. And they don't take kindly to answering questions. And it was especially with regard to some of the financial dealings, and mainly financial dealings that seemed to be the ones that were kind of the tip of the iceberg that we could see, and the incorporation, setting
so
it
can
up
you tell
as
me
a
a little bit about that incorporation? I've read about it, of course, but
Willis had the story, or the workers were promoting the story, that they needed to get an organizational name that they could use to cover for a worker that was wanting to go into Hungary. And it's not absolutely certain on who the worker was. We did have one Alberta worker that was there, but there was another worker that I guess was going to be her companion, who was coming from Britain, from what I understand. And for some reason, she was having trouble getting into Hungary. And for some unknown reason, Willis seemed to take it upon himself to arrange to set up this organization that would provide what the Hungarian government wanted. Willis had the story, or the workers were promoting the story.
And now, can you just because a lot of people won't know who Willis is, can you just tell me?
Willis Propp was the overseer in Alberta at the time.
Okay, so thank you for sharing that. So I'm just, I guess, not really clear how it went from like Willis wanting to create this corporation so that these two workers could go to Hungary, and then somehow, sometime later, these excommunications happened. So, okay.
The Alberta incorporation triggered a lot of concern, and even maybe more among some of the really dedicated people than among some of the ones that maybe were a little bit more slipshod, like I was. We had one of the friends came over who was a little higher ranking than we were, and he came and he was most upset and wondered what on earth is Willis doing here? Why did he do this?
You got a copy in the mail, didn't you?
Yeah, he got a copy of it sent to him from somewhere. We hadn't seen it yet. So in my naivety, I said, well, there must have been a good reason for it. I can't imagine Willis would do something that was improper. But this friend was very alarmed. But anyway, as time went on, he seems to have got kind of whipped back into his box again, and strong supporter until the day he died.
Okay.
So there was a number of different aspects of it. It depends on who you talk to, probably what was more important than something else.
Still how it got exposed. So somebody died in Saskatchewan.
Oh, yeah. I guess what brought this thing to light was that because he had done the incorporation in 1996, 96 or 95, I've forgotten now. And nobody knew about it until a couple of years later. Somebody that had passed away in Saskatchewan had left money in their estate to the Alberta Society of Christian Assemblies. And this kind of got some eyebrows raised, and people started looking into it. And it kind of came to the surface then that, yes, when you do a search on Alberta Society of Christian Assemblies with the Societies Department or branch in provincial government, there is such a thing there, and it had the list of all of the 10 workers, I think, that had signed the document to witness it. And so
people were concerned because Willis had a bank account.
Oh, another one, yes.
Thing, yeah.
Yeah, there was
credit card. And now that doesn't
Well,
seem
now, yes, I admit it's true because, we've moved to such an electronic society that now you wonder how anyone could function without that. But I also remember back then, like, we just didn't think that was something the workers.
That's right. That was a
and he had this bank account in the name of F. Willis Propp Enterprises.
right.
Okay, so it was also a business account.
Business account, anyway, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
And I think he probably inherited the mineral rights probably from his parents. I don't know.
That's what we understood.
Yeah.
That he had inherited them, and he claimed that he got them and he'd forgotten all about them. He got them 10 years or 12 years earlier and forgotten all about them. But the strange thing is that apparently you have to keep the mineral rights active, you have to renew them every 3 years.
Oh,
So he
so it
must
wasn't
have
possible that he could have forgotten about them because he
didn't sound very, very possible. No.
Yeah,
That's right. Yeah. So that's kind of the way we felt about what was back then too. That then we get into some discussions. Willis, from what we understood, brought Merlin Howlett back from Korea to supposedly get things quieted down and under control, because the rumor that we heard was that he considered that Merlin was a great peacemaker.
yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So that's
Myrna, what was your story as far as did you grow up in a professing home? And
My mom had been in the work early on. She'd gone in the work in 1929, I think it was.
okay,
And actually her mother had been interviewed by William Irvine, according to
interesting.
they lived in Minnesota, and apparently the families that professed had to come up to Canada to convention and they had an interview with this William Irvine so he could tell whether they had got the truth or not.
Oh,
Anyway,
I see.
I had never heard this until I talked to an aunt of mine a few years ago, and this is the history that she had told us. My mom was not in the work very long. She'd had an accident. Someone had run over her on the convention grounds after about 3 years she'd been in the work. And so she left the work and she married my dad. And I came along, and I can't remember any time in my life when there wasn't a Sunday morning meeting in our home. There weren't a lot of friends. but around, but we always had Sunday morning meeting. We would have had maybe 8 or 10 people for Sunday morning meeting. And she definitely believed it was the one and only true way. And of course, that's what she told me, and I believed it. I just finished school, went to university, met Dawn, we got married, and had a family, and we had meeting in our home for 20 years before we got excommunicated. So that's kind of the gist of the short story.
All of this stuff came to light, and then my understanding is there were, what, 2 or 3 workers that were going around visiting people and asking the question, like, do you support the ministry, right? Was that the question?
No, well, I don't know. I wasn't aware that that was being asked.
Oh,
It
okay.
may very well have been. We weren't aware of that.
Okay. All of this stuff came to light, and then
But the question that we understood was that all of the workers had been brought before a tribunal of overseers and asked whether they would support Willis or not.
okay.
And all of them, except a couple of them, said yes, they did.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But how did it get to the point where you guys were excommunicated?
Oh, okay. Well, they had started excommunicating people 2 or 3 weeks earlier. There was one fellow that had confronted the worker in his area because she had been lying about certain thing. Again, it was a money issue. I forget which one it was.
Mm-hmm.
And she confronted him, or he confronted her about it, and told her that she was lying, and that if what the workers were going to lie, they weren't going to be allowed in his home. And so she decided, I presume after discussion with Willis, that okay, if she wasn't allowed in his home, no other workers and nobody else would be allowed there for meeting either. So they took that meeting away, but the people that had the meeting decided, well, we're going to keep on with our meeting anyway, if anybody wants to come. And they did. So the next Sunday, there were 3 or 4 couples that came from different parts of the province even.
Oh.
And there was an old couple that came that normally did come there, and they were 86 years old. Very nice old couple. And they said, well, we just want to go there to test the spirit of the meeting. And if it's not right, we'll agree that, okay, the workers know what they're doing.
I had known that old couple since I was a very small child.
Okay.
So they were old family friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, as a result, everybody that was at that meeting got excommunicated,
Including this couple.
including this old couple. And the way they handled that one was they phoned them up at 10 or 10:30 one night, and just on the phone, and just told them that you're no longer part of this fellowship. So anyway, they were excommunicated. And then the next Sunday they were coming into Edmonton to visit their son who lived here. And the son called his elder to say, well, mom and dad are with me. They'll be coming to meeting with me on Sunday. Is that okay? And the elder said, well, sure. Yeah, we'd love to see them. Then our friend said, well, I suppose I should tell you that mom and dad were excommunicated. So the elder said, oh, okay, I better check. So I guess he checked with Willis and got back to our friend and said, no, I'm sorry, they can't come. So we were wondering about what should we do about this old couple. Well, before they even had been rejected by the elder in Edmonton, we had talked to their son and said, well, if your folks come to Edmonton and they have any trouble getting to the regular meeting, they're more than welcome to come to ours. So after they'd been told that no, they weren't welcome there, he called us and said, is that offer still good to come to your meeting? And we said, yes, it definitely is. So they came, and well, kind of the rest is history. So we got a call
The next Wednesday
the
night.
next Wednesday, yeah, from Jim Knight and Scott McChesney saying, we'd like to have a visit with you on after meeting tonight. The meeting wasn't our place. We had to go someplace else. So after we got home, and they came about 9 or 9:30. And so we had our little visit with them, and they told us, okay, you know that these people are not supposed to be in meeting. And I said, well, can you tell me why? That, Don, is none of your business. And that answer came up 2 or 3 more times in the process of the discussion. And we dragged it on for a little while more. And they finally said, well, what is your bottom line on supporting the workers? And Myrna kind of pressured them a little bit. Well, what do you mean support you workers? You told us in talking tonight that you are fallible. And why would we be following a fallible person? And they said, you're to follow the ministry, and if you don't, you can't be part of it. So do you follow it, or do you follow them or not? And the final verdict, of course, was no, we don't. So they informed us that, okay, you are no longer part of this fellowship and cannot go to meetings anywhere I forget what area we were limited to, North America or the world, I forget where it was. But anyway, it was a nonsensical thing. So anyway, that's kind of where we ended up where we are. So we're
so
very happy
initially,
about
when
it.
you first were excommunicated, you continued to have your own unsanctioned meeting?
That's right. Then the day after, I guess it was, I think it was the next day, another of the friends in Edmonton, we don't live right in Edmonton, we're in Sherwood Park, a suburb of, well, not really a suburb of Edmonton, it's a bedroom community near Edmonton. And so one of the friends came out to see us and said, well, what do you plan to do now? And we said, well, we haven't figured that out yet. And they said, well, if you decide to have meetings, we'll be there.
Okay.
So we decided, okay, we will. So we did have meetings, and we had people that were, some of the others that had been excommunicated, and then some of the others that just were fed up with the way things were and wanted to take a break from it.
Right.
And including this old 86-year couple and their son. So we had up to 30 people at times. So we kind of phased out a little bit, and then the old gentleman passed away, and his wife was getting very deaf. I don't think she probably heard very much of what was going on anyway, and I think she mainly just liked to come for the social aspect of it.
Right.
So we, but the lady,
did Willis ever come and talk to you directly, or did he just have these 2 other men come and talk to you?
we never did talk to Willis at the time of the excommunication or before even. When I mentioned that we had Merlin Howlett visiting us the one time, well, actually Merlin and Willis had come to stay with us for 2 or 3 days.
Okay.
And I don't know whether their intent was to try and whip us into shape, that they had seen us, that we were maybe getting a little bit
Asking too many questions.
stubborn or questioning or whatever. But anyway, Willis would always make himself unavailable and disappear down to the room and not be available to talk at all. But Merlin seemed to be ready for any confrontation.
Okay.
And so we would have some very interesting discussions with Willis, and he would proceed, with Merlin, and he would tell us all these untruths.
Did your children leave at the same time that you were excommunicated?
Well, one had passed away, and
Right.
the other 2 were away from home. Well, one was staying at home at the time, and he wasn't going to meeting. Our daughter was going,
Okay.
and the other one had moved away already. So, yeah, so it was only an issue for our daughter, I guess.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Yeah.
And she was told that if she came to our unsanctioned meeting, that she would not be allowed to go back to meeting either.
Interesting.
Yeah, so they reassigned her to a meeting down the road.
Oh, okay. And did she go to that meeting originally, or
A
did
little
she-
while, not for very long.
For a little while,
Yeah.
but yeah, she
Yeah.
got very annoyed with the comments that were being made about these people that have lost out and,
Right.
and
They're bitter.
Yeah.
bitter people.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
for your own perspective, you would have had friends that suddenly stopped
Oh,
calling. All of
That's
that.
right. Yeah.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
yeah.
we had friends that, yeah, they didn't really know we existed, and
Yeah.
friends that we would have over for meals and whatever, and
And
Yeah,
I
we
guess
were-
even in your own meeting, there were people that chose not to come, right?
They were told not to come, yeah.
Yeah.
They were reassigned to different
Right.
meetings. Yeah.
Right.
People just kind of disappeared, and it was like we moved to a different part of the country and we never heard from anybody anymore. And for 25 years, we have never had anybody come from the inside ever come and ask us, why did you leave?
Can I talk about something here, just that Dawn brought up?
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
and this matter of, and I've puzzled about this for quite a while. Whatever happened and what happened to the communications between, like us and Dawn and Myrna, for example.
Yeah.
Like, why did we kind of, we went one way and you went another way? And I've talked about that with other people. And it's kind of a, I don't know whether I'm making excuses or not. First of all, I would like to apologize for not having got a hold of you.
well, I
Because,
guess we should apologize too, because
But we didn't know who was still in and who, just the few that had been excommunicated, we knew them, but
yeah.
there were a lot of others like yourselves that we had no idea what you were
Yeah,
thinking.
and see, this is just my point, because we didn't know how, for example, how you might have reacted to us. Or maybe
Yeah.
Don and Myrna didn't want to have anything more to do with these crazy people. You know?
well, yeah, and I think we were probably
Yeah.
looking at it sort of the similar way from our aspect of it, that
Yeah.
we didn't want to, in your case, we weren't aware of where you were. We just assumed, okay, they're still in, and they're not going to want to be talking to us renegades, because that's liable to get them in trouble with the authorities.
And the workers were busy. We had a call from somebody one time that said the workers just left and they told us not to talk to you. So that probably happened to goodness knows how many people that all of a sudden we never heard from again.
Yeah,
But the-
definitely they were told not to talk to people that
Yeah.
were
Yeah,
we never were, nobody told us not to talk to anybody, but maybe we were already suspect, I don't know.
I know, Dawn, you said you had some questions even as a younger person about this being the one true way because of your dad and all that kind of stuff. But at the point that you were excommunicated, had you let go of that belief, or were you
no,
really?
it was still in the back of my mind all the time that, okay, I'm looking for some kind of a sign here that that this system is the right way,
Mhm.
and that what am I missing? And I was constantly kind of feeling that, okay, it's my problem, but it's not. There's no answer coming very clear until Jim Knight delivered the answer.
Right. Berna, how were you feeling? Like I'm just thinking, I think there were, like, from those calls that were recorded, there were some people that definitely still believed in this being the one true way. And then they, like, to say that the rug was ripped out from underneath them is putting it mildly in a sense. But like how did you feel at that time when that message came?
Well, I think I mentioned that my mom had been in the work, so of course
Yeah.
I was thoroughly brainwashed, if I can use that word.
Yeah.
And somehow with all this stuff that happened, for some reason, I wasn't really upset. And I'm not sure why. It wasn't because I didn't believe that I had to be part of that one true way. I had no alternative, but I really didn't feel like we'd done anything wrong to deserve being kicked out. So at that point, we'd heard so much of this other stuff that was going on that you're not really sure you want to be part of it anymore anyhow.
We just saw that they weren't abiding by some of the things that they always had taught were, I don't know, you call them basic truths or something, like that we don't take a name and we don't do this and we don't do that. And then we discover, hey, they sign up with a name if it's to their convenience. And we've always heard that, you know, they go totally on faith. They're not concerned about money. But then you find out that Willis had a $20,000 credit card, and that they've got who knows how much money in the bank from estates and other sources. So it starts to make you wonder that, okay, they're not following all of these basic truths. What else aren't they following? And at that point, we still weren't really thinking about doctrine at all. It was just the practical applications of some of the things that the theoretical things they were talking about.
Right?
Yeah.
No, looking back, it's the best thing that ever happened to us.
Yes, Merlin, Georgina, it's over to you.
Yeah, interested to hear.
Yeah.
Yes, Merlin. Could you maybe talk a little bit about what caused you to decide to give up your meeting?
Well, we had heard, of course, about all these people who had been excommunicated, and Don and Myrna were in Edmonton, so it's a fair ways away. And at first we thought this was an Edmonton problem, I guess. And then it came closer to home, and there was people in Calgary that were excommunicated, and some of them we knew fairly well. And we realized that they were getting, it was becoming more, the question was put to people. So do you support the ministry in every decision that they make? Basically I'm not sure it was exactly worded that way with everybody, but, and we knew that we couldn't support the ministry with every decision that they made. You couldn't support anybody that way. And when we heard about people being excommunicated, and then that if somebody else went to one of those meetings, then they were excommunicated and so on, we realized that if any of those people came to our meeting, we wouldn't turn them away. And so at that time, I guess it really mattered to us that we not be excommunicated from the fellowship. The fellowship mattered to us for a variety of reasons, but we, I think, still had the feeling that it was the one true way. Not that we didn't feel like everybody else was wrong, but for us, we felt that if we didn't keep going to meeting, well, then our salvation was in jeopardy. So I guess when we did that, that was part of the decision.
How was that decision received, like when you spoke to the workers?
Go ahead.
Well, that's an interesting part of it, because we had made up our minds that we were going to give up the meeting for the reasons that Georgie said. And I made it a point of going to every person that was in our meeting and telling them why. So it wasn't, I didn't want people hearing about it from anybody else or guessing at what our motives were or anything else. We wanted people to know why we were doing what we were doing. And when we didn't pull any punches, we actually told people about some of the problems that were going on and how it affected us and how we saw it could affect us.
And I don't think some of them didn't know anything about it, of course.
No.
Like now. We thought at the time that this is an Alberta problem. And if they could get this straightened out, it's power gone wrong. And the workers were supporting Willis, yes, but if people could only understand that they'd get it straightened out and maybe, things would be okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess had hope for the fellowship. Well, we stayed for another 25 years, so.
Yeah, my story was going to be to finish off. The workers misrepresented our reasons for giving up the meeting. Basically, they told people that we weren't telling the truth for our motives for giving up the meeting, and so that made its way back to us, filtered its way back to us, and so we realized that, games were being played, and we weren't really surprised about that, because that was the way things were being done.
Mhm.
That was the modus operandi for Alberta, and we weren't surprised about that. So like Georgie said, we were thinking, okay, it's somebody, or one or two individuals or more, that have gone rogue. And because if they could just get that bring that under control and get things back on track again, there was, it was good. We didn't feel like the meetings were doing us any harm. And in fact, we felt quite the opposite, that the meeting that we were in fact, it was at our place, we felt quite good about it. But we did not want to be complicit with what was happening in Alberta. So that's why we took the stand. So the question that we've asked ourselves, and we've talked about it more lately, why did we hang around for another 20 some years and be not really in it and not really out of it? And Dawn and Myrna, I kind of think that maybe the way that you went was the way to do it. I mean, there's nothing very satisfying about being lukewarm about something, or half-hearted about something, or something being involved in something you don't really have confidence in. And we kept that distance between us and the ministry ever since. It was never something that we could trust after that.
After all of that happened, and then all these years have passed, when the information came out about Dean Brewer, like, what were your first thoughts then?
We've been there before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in fact, we had some conversations with a lot of the people that we know now that had a lot of confidence that, because this was such an egregious thing that had happened, something has to change. I mean, it just can't go on the way it is any longer. And we just kind of looked at them and said, no, just wait. It will play out this time very much the way it played out the last time. Nothing's really changed that much. And here we are. That's what's happening. There's things aren't going to fix. Things aren't going to get better or easier. It's not happening.
So when did you start to realize that it wasn't just an Alberta problem?
Well, we knew about things in other places. We knew about the problems in Alaska. We didn't know too much about a lot of the things that have come to light since in the last year and a half, but particularly Alaska we knew about. But I didn't know very much about the sexual abuse. That was a surprise, especially that it was so widespread and covered up.
You see, though, the abuse, the sexual abuse, is a result of wrong doctrine, if I can put it that way. It's covering up something that wasn't right in the first place. That's causing is why it's very similar to what was happening back in the Alberta days, because that's exactly what was happening then. It was, people were being hurt, people were being put out. The reasons for people being put out wasn't true. A lot we were able to find out enough about that to realize that the stories weren't right. So
as soon as we started to hear about this, there's more and more things being exposed about sexual abuse, we said right away, this is a symptom. It's not the problem. It's a symptom of the problem.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I would say now, my answer to somebody would be cleaning up the sexual abuse isn't gonna take care of the problems in the church. I mean, it should be cleaned up. Should never happen, and yes, it should be cleaned up, but the problems are still gonna remain. They'll express themselves in other ways.
Yeah, and I of course agree with you on that 100%. What stands out to you when you look back at that time? Were you really shocked? Like, was there a point where you were like, wow, I really just can't believe this? Or
I think it kind of came on, there was a lot of issues, like Dawn said, and it's probably started back about the mid-90s. And so we'd been asking questions too. We'd read a lot of things that were sent to us, which we were supposed to burn. And yeah, so it wasn't a shock. It was a disappointment.
Mhm.
And like Merle said, total loss of trust. So for the next, I don't know how many years, we didn't attend a convention in Alberta.
oh, okay,
Province for conventions.
I see.
So, and then gradually we started, it was just,
How long after all of this happened, Willis died, right? Like that's when he was no longer overseer, or was he overseer until he died, or?
no, he was more or less, after this whole situation, he was pretty well neutralized. There wasn't,
Oh, I see, okay.
it did have an effect.
Yeah.
Because it was so public. The workers supported him, but they had to do something about it.
Right, okay.
So and then he was getting older and not as able to, so they brought, I guess Merlin came from Saskatchewan to take over.
Okay.
No, it was not good.
And we thought, we had hope, we actually had good hopes that Merlin would be able to help the situation. And one of the things that we said was, if he had gone to all of those people who had been so terribly treated and said, you know, on behalf of the ministry, we are sorry for the way you were treated. And we felt like it, maybe these people wouldn't come back, but at least they would make it right. And that didn't happen.
Yeah, we were just wondering, Mark Huddle came after.
Yes, he might have come before.
Yes,
Before Merlin,
Yeah.
yeah. And he was
Oh.
here for, I don't know, he came and visit, you asked him to come and visit us.
Yeah.
Which was over a year after we'd gotten excommunicated. And so he came with his companion, and I guess the first thing when he came in, he said, "Is this being recorded?" And what did you say?
I said, yes, it is. Why would that matter? And he said, well, sometimes I like to change my mind. And if it's been recorded, it makes it much more difficult.
But in the process of talking to them, and we had never met either one of them before, I guess it was right at the time when the excommunication tapes had surfaced. And so we asked them if they'd heard them or if they'd like to hear them. He said, yeah, he would. So they sat and listened to the excommunication tapes at our kitchen table. And you could just see their jaws tightening as they were listening. And when they were done, I said, so does that sound like a spirit-led ministry? And they wouldn't answer. Yeah, we were just, I don't know, that's the last time we've ever had workers in our house.
But you see, that was part of it, because there was a number of workers that heard those tapes.
Mhm.
And they knew that it had been badly handled.
Yeah.
You just had to know. It didn't take a rocket scientist to know that was just poorly handled.
Yeah.
And so that was, I think, was the beginning of the end for Willis.
Yeah.
Because-
Probably was.
Yeah.
Because it was just, he became what I would call a lame duck president, the worker equivalent. He was just putting in time after that, because he didn't have
Yeah.
much
Yeah.
authority. That's my opinion, of course, because that's all it is, but that's the way it seemed to me and to us, that he had basically, that this whole thing had just basically taken him down.
I don't know about what he said to you at the convention.
Yeah, I was coming out of Didsbury Convention one time, and we're walking out of the dining shed, and Willis came up to me and he says, Merle, can I talk to you for a minute? And I said, well, sure. He said, Merle, you just gotta believe me. I did not have those bank accounts. I do not have bank accounts. I don't have money put away, and
Don't have a credit card.
don't have a credit card and stuff like that. He says, you got to believe me. And I just looked at him and I said, Willis, I don't care about that. That's not something I care about.
But it mattered to him.
But it mattered to him. And so this is
It was just a sad old man.
is
really.
somebody that's tormented
Mhm.
by these things, obviously. So that's the kind of environment that we were dealing with. And so you would have a very legitimate question if you were to say, why on earth did you just kill time for that length of time? And I think there's no real good excuse, but you got to remember that we come from it was a cultural thing too. Like we were, all our families were professing. We had children that were professing. We had brothers and sisters that had been in this all their life. Most of the friends of the people that we socialized with were professing. So it's not a very honorable thing to say, well, we were just looking after our own personal selfish interests to stay in this thing. But I'd have to say that had a lot to do with, maybe mostly, with why we stayed in this, because we didn't want to deal with the fallout.
And like Myrna said, we didn't know anything else.
Yeah.
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 Nothing to compare it with.
Yeah.
So in some ways, Don and Myrna, our situations are quite parallel. In other ways,
Yeah.
you
They're
had
very
kind of
different.
the decision made for you.
Yeah.
And we dodged the decision because we saw what had happened to other people. And we knew what was coming, because we had talked it over, and we said, could we actually turn people away that wanted to come to our place for meeting? And
They quit excommunicating people not long after us, though. There were people who went to meetings that the people who had the meeting really should have been excommunicated, but it obviously wasn't working very well, so they quit doing it.
Yeah.
well, and there was friends that were pushing back.
Mhm.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And saying you can't keep doing this to people.
Yeah.
And so it became a political non-starter, if you really want to think about it. They just couldn't keep doing that and get away with it.
One thing that we found out recently, is that there was a lot of family division then, like there is now. And there was people who took a really strong stand against what their family members, like some of the people who were excommunicated and their children, just did not understand at all, and were very much against what had happened to them, and they were supporting the workers.
You mean the children were?
The children were, yeah. And now, in the last year and a half, all that's been revealed, some of them have gone back to their parents and apologized and said, we didn't understand. We didn't know what you were going through.
Yeah. I had a young man, well, yeah, a young man. He's not as young now, but he was, I'm gonna call him a young man, that contacted me here after the Dean Brewer thing happened. And I got this phone call just out of the blue. And I said, huh, that's good to talk to you again. It's been years since we've talked. And this man said to me, I just want to tell you that I feel so bad for the way we treated you back those years. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, we basically cut ourselves off from your family. We were good friends, and we cut ourselves off from you because you were troublemakers, you were dissidents, you were some of those people. And we didn't want to have anything to do with you. And now we're starting to understand. And I thought, wow, like that was pretty amazing. And I thought, well, that was a gutsy thing to do, wasn't it? For him to do that. But
Did you experience a lot of that after you gave up your meeting? Like people that like kind of distance themselves from you, or?
Not really that much, but
Right.
we kind of were disengaged, I guess you would say.
so, this matter of the exclusivity is at the root of most of our problems. Because if you think about it, what keeps you from looking at other options? What keeps you from going to another church? What keeps you from reading somebody else's stuff?
Yeah.
Right? It's fear. And why is there fear? Because if you're not part of this fellowship, then your salvation's in question.
Yeah.
So that exclusivity thing is what's has been used to whip people into line for a lot of years.
And it's so connected to legalism and accepting the ministry, and your salvation was through your own personal worthiness and self-sacrifice. And that's religion, and that's not Christianity, and that's why there was no love.
That's right.
I had to read a lot of books to figure that out.
Nowadays, it would have been so much easier.
Yeah.
You could just watch a video.
Yeah, one
Yeah.
little YouTube would have it all solved.
A podcast.
Yeah.
But
The biggest problem is there's just not enough hours in the day.
Yeah.
But in spite of the more information and the modern communication methods, the problems are still the same.
They are.
Yeah. And to think that they think they can deliver a spiritual death sentence. Really, that's what they're doing when they kick you out, because they are the one and only true way. And obviously it's not true. Yeah. And to think that and of course once we heard about the origins of that was some more books, of course, that we started to read after we'd gotten excommunicated.
So it wasn't until after you were excommunicated that you learned about the origins?
Yeah.
Interesting.
For sure. Didn't know
Well,
anything.
I think we knew some ideas about, I'd certainly heard about William Irvine.
Maybe not
mentioned.
like the founder, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But it had always been, well, we even heard it mentioned at conventions. I think they would talk about the stories about how there's some man that they're claiming started this, but it's really not correct. It goes back, you can trace it back through every generation, right back to the shores of Galilee.
I think Willis even had an elders meeting one night, didn't he, to explain this when it was starting to bubble under the surface? And we basically explained that it was renewed, or God brought it back, but it had been there originally from the shores of Galilee. And then of course, I guess it died out, and now it's prospering again. And of course, we once we heard about the origins of that was some more books, of course, that we started to.
So
Yeah,
just looking at like the past, this situation in Alberta and the current situation, it really, do you see much of a difference? I mean, other than the fact that now we're aware of so many more victims, which of course is
Oh,
heartbreaking, and I don't want to in any way minimize that, but
No, it's, I guess, as far as I'm concerned, it's all the same basic problem. The key issue maybe is a little different this time, a whole lot different this time than it was then. But it still boils down to the fact that the ministry is the one that calls the shots, and you don't mess with them.
the idea that the ministry are the gatekeepers to our salvation.
That's right.
Mhm.
That's
You
the
know,
better wording for it.
It's not whether Christ finds us acceptable or not, or loves us. It's whether or not the ministry is willing to give us access.
Mhm.
You know, Georgie was reminding me of a statement that one of the senior workers made here a little while ago, and she reminded me of this. He said that told somebody that a questioning Christian is a questionable Christian. You heard that one?
Haven't heard that one,
No.
but no, I can
Okay.
imagine it.
I
It's sad.
had heard that. That was Merlin, wasn't it, Merle?
Yes.
I think he attributed it to someone else, but
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, so there you go. Getting back to what you were talking about, Don and Merlin, about asking questions.
Yeah.
Like you don't ask questions. If you're asking questions, and we've known this for a long time, if it was considered to be a noble thing to do or a righteous thing to do when you were coming to gospel meetings, you
Yes.
say, why is this? Why do we do it? Why do you do it this way? Why does that matter? And so on and so forth, right? But after you've been professing a while, and you go to the workers and say, why do we do it? Why is it we do it that way? Why is that important? Well, you mustn't have the things figured out, right? You must have some faith issues or something if you're asking questions. Why are
Yeah.
you asking questions? You've been professing for how long now? Why are you asking questions?
I know you guys all know this, but I mean, how far could you get into the gospel before you read questions from the disciples or the apostle? You know, like you don't get very far and you're reading the
No.
questions. Like they always had questions.
everybody
Yeah.
questioned. Yeah.
What was it? So was it Paul's letter? He talked about the Christians that were in was it Berea?
The Bereans, yeah, they
Oh.
searched the scriptures to see.
Yeah,
yeah.
Oh,
They were more
Daily.
that's in Acts, right? That they were
yeah, they were
More
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 yeah.
noble than was it Thessalonica? Maybe I can't remember.
so they were asking questions. They were finding answers. They didn't know it all.
No.
How did we get here? This is maybe a side discussion, but I think it speaks to the fact that we were held captive to a system because we didn't want to ask questions. We didn't feel we could ask questions.
I think that's the main part though, is that you didn't feel you could, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Like one of the things I just want to say is don't be so hard on yourself.
You know,
No, I think, wherever you are, you learn. We've learned over the years. You can't say that it was a wasted years.
you know.
And do you think that this current crisis will change anything for the meetings? Like the underlying structure or any of the doctrine or any of the beliefs? Do you think this is going to have an impact?
I think the legalism they'll cut back on the rules with regard to dress, for example, and what were you saying the other day?
Oh,
Your different freedoms.
yeah, allowing you to engage in some sports.
Oh
Or-
yeah, well I think there's no unity in that though, because like
No, that's true.
there's places where that's very permissive permitted and places where, yeah, so the rules vary depending on where you live.
Exactly.
So there could be changes, but basically, I think there will be a core system that survives. There might be more. There could be a lot more fall away. But somebody said that, yeah, the people that remain are even more doubling down on the doctrine and on what they believe, on the supporting the ministry and those kinds of things.
The ones that do stay will probably be more hardcore than ever.
I think that's what'll be all right.
Do you
But
see a
there's
lot of like young people? I mean, when I look here in Ontario, we definitely do have young couples, young families, all of that, but there's not a huge number. Like in Alberta, do you still see a lot of young families?
We don't see anybody.
Well, you don't know. That would be more for
25 years.
yeah,
You know, there still are a lot.
yeah.
There are. But you know, we don't know where anybody is really at in their own journey.
Mhm.
They might, you know,
It's quite a social club.
But there's many people that are still in the 2x2 system that are honest.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Trained Christians, and they're
Well, there's
not.
some very, very good people there.
Yeah. So I think I've said sometimes that people do have a relationship with Christ and they're honest and true in spite of the system.
Right,
Mhm.
right. Yeah.
I think the biggest regret I would say is that so many of us have missed opportunities of having good Christian communities around us.
Right.
We're just denied that. We just believed that no, you got to turn your back on all those people.
Yeah.
And that's part of our deconstruction, I think, learning not to be judgmental about everybody and everything out there. I mean, we don't know what God's doing in their life.
That's right.
You can tell by their hair, though.
Hi, Don.
What's wrong with you?
I haven't been paying attention, I guess.
What am I supposed to conclude about you?
What do you mean? Yeah. It was a wonderful social club. We had people we knew all over the country, and we knew that they thought exactly like we did. But they weren't really friends when you leave and find out that they don't think like you anymore, and they really don't want to be challenged in their thinking.
Right.
Yeah.
No.
But we did have an awful lot of good times together.
No, it was a great conversation though. It was wonderful chatting with all of you, getting to know Don and Myrna.
Well, nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when I do come out to Alberta some point, I'll look forward to meeting you in person.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for coming on the call tonight, for sharing your experiences.